week, just to give everybody a little idea of where we're going. Finished up a sermon series last week. We're going to take a brief pause this week. Next week, we're starting a sermon series on the book of Jonah. That's going to go 3 or 4 weeks. Really excited about that, but not starting it yet. Today, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 20, beginning in verse 1. Just following the lectionary today, preaching on one of Jesus' parables. What's interesting, though, is the more I plan for today's message, knowing where we're going next week, knowing generally what we're going to talk about in the book of Jonah and the themes of that book, it really became apparent to me that this passage is a really great intro to sort of the types of ideas that we're talking about in the book of Jonah. And so this is kind of going to be a segue sermon. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a little different than usual. Maybe you won't think so. We're just going to kind of explore, bounce around what Jesus is talking about here, talk about some real practical stuff that we can do in response to it, and kind of have a conversation about what's going on here. So if you want to read with me, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 20, beginning in verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said to them, "You go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right, I will give you." So they went. Going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing, and he said to them, Why do you stand here idle all day?" They said to him, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You go into the vineyard too." And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first." And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. Now when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me, or do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first, and the first last." So here's what's going on here. Jesus gives us this fairly common picture in his day, even for us, maybe not as much in our part of the country in our time period, but certainly in our modern era in America, this is nothing foreign to us. What you have is you have a vineyard owner. He owns this huge farm, and he's in need of workers to come and work in the harvest at his vineyard. So what he does is he goes into the marketplace. And how apparently the local economy worked here was instead of hiring people for the year or for the season or for the month, what he would do is he would go into the marketplace and there would be gathered men looking for work. So these guys would show up and say, "Hey, look, I'm a physically fit guy. I can do manual labor. I need to make money to feed my family, to support myself. Can you hire me?" And so you would have farm owners and vineyard owners would come, and workers would come, meet in the marketplace, and decide who was going to work and where. And so someone would go into the marketplace, and if I'm a vineyard owner, I would look and I would find maybe the strongest or the most able, or maybe I would look for the guys who were really, really itching to get a job, who were coming up to me and asking because I knew they were going to work hard, or maybe somebody who I had known and who would work for me before, and I knew they were a good worker, and I would say, you, and you, come and work on my farm. Here's what I'll pay you for the day. A denarius was a fairly standard unit of measure, that if you came and worked for a full day, you'd get a denarius. If you want to think about it as $100, think about it as $150, probably somewhere in the range of $100 as a fair wage for a day's worth of labor, if you want a number in your mind. It's a good chunk of money. If you worked and made that much every day for a week, you could support your family, you could buy food, your kids would be taken care of, etc. So that's what happens. This vineyard owner, he goes in, he sees men in the marketplace, he says, look, I've got a ton of work to get done. I'm taking all you guys, come to work at my farm. I'll give you the standard denarius for a day, a fair wage for your labor. Come work for me. They say, yep, that sounds good. We want to come work. We're going to work all day. We'll walk home with a denarius at the end of the day. We'll feed our families. We'll be good to go. These guys come. They start working. They go out into the fields. He gets everything set up, and he leaves. He goes back to the marketplace. When he gets back to the marketplace, he looks around. He says, well, wait a second. There's more people here than were last time. He said, when I left before, I took everybody with me that was available to work. And he comes back. He says, well, now there's 3 or 4 more guys. And he says, what are you guys doing? Why are you standing and just doing nothing? Do you want to go work? Why don't you go work in my marketplace? He says, look, you come to the marketplace to work. You're standing idle. You're sitting here. You're not making money. You're not getting any work done. I've got tons of work to be done. So why don't you go work for me? And so a few hours in, he goes to the second group and says, come work for me in my marketplace, and sends them. And then he continues to do it. He continues to go. It says he goes back the 6th hour, then he goes back the 9th hour, and then again in the 11th. So 3, and then 6, and then 9, and then 11, all throughout the day. He continues to go back, and we don't know why these guys, maybe they're lazy, maybe they slept in, maybe their kid had a doctor's appointment, I don't know, but for whatever reason, they're late in the day in the marketplace. They've, for the most part, lost their ability to earn any money, if let alone a full day's wage. If you get hired the 11th hour of the day when everybody's been out there, this is late afternoon kind of time. At that point, these guys are saying, look, I know I'm not going to get hired, and even if I get hired, I'm going to get like $10, and $10 is like one value meal at McDonald's. That's not going to help much with my kids. But they say, look, if I leave the marketplace, I'm not making any money. So these guys, they're standing around, they're doing nothing, they're not making any money, there's not much hope for them to make money to support their families, but they say, look, if I go home, I'm definitely getting nothing. So I'm going to stay here, and hopefully I can get some job maybe somebody got sick and went home early, and I can take their place. If I can make any money for the day, I'm going to do it. And so this vineyard owner continues to go back, and he continues to hire people and hire people and hire people to work in his vineyard. So then everybody's favorite time of day comes. Time to go home, time to get paid. Now, those are the 2 best parts of a job, right? Time to go home, time to get paid, especially when you're working for somebody else. So that time of day comes. It's a good time of the day. They get to take a break. It's very clear that this was a hot day, so that's like our normal September weather where it's 86 degrees. That's what we're talking about. Anybody done some outside work this week? I have never sweat so much raking leaves. I have never gotten so overheated raking leaves. Usually, you get your sweatshirt on, it's nice and chilly. I've been sweating raking leaves this week. I don't know about you guys, but that's the kind of day this is. It's hot out, and so these guys go and they're just they're out in the fields, and it's a vineyard. I don't know if anybody ever seen a grapevine. I've shown pictures a couple times during sermons. We're not talking trees here, all right? The apple pickers were having a better day this day. These guys, they're vines. They're this tall. I mean, there is no shade in this field. They're baking. And so they've been out there all day. They've worked for hours and hours and hours. It's hard work. They're tired. They're sunburnt. They're exhausted. They're dehydrated. All of this stuff. And they say, oh, finally, I can get paid for the day. And I can go home with my money. I can support my family. I can go home to a cool house, eat a fresh cooked meal, and relax for the evening before I come back again tomorrow. Now, the first thing that happens is that those who got there last, who had only worked for an hour, all right? So picture you've been out in this field for 9, 10 hours, right? 11 hours maybe, and the guy who just got there gets in line in front of you to get his paycheck. All right, we imagine that they're already not a little happy, but then they're peeking around, and these guys in the back of the line that have been there all day notice that these guys who worked an hour get a full denarius. They get a full day's wage for what they worked for, and they say, I'm a little upset that he cut me in line, but maybe this could work out well for me. Because clearly, the vineyard owner is feeling generous today. He is giving out Christmas bonuses, right, in July. He's feeling generous. This could work out well. If that guy worked an hour and got $100, what am I going to get from working 10? Maybe I'm going to get 400 or 500. They begin to think, man, maybe we're going to get something extra as well. And so you can kind of imagine they're starting to get a little excited as they start working their way up the line. And so these guys that got there first says, look, I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I got my stuff ready and I got there first thing at the marketplace. I was ready to go. I was ready to work hard. This guy who's generous, he's going to see that. He's going to appreciate the incredible amount of work I did, all of the money that I made him, all of the sacrifices that I made. I cannot wait to see what I get. If he's paying those guys $100 an hour for working at the end of the day when it was cool, what's he gonna pay me when I did all the hard work? Well, to their surprise, they get to the front of the line, they go to the foreman, and he gives them a denarius. And they say, well, wait a minute. Those guys only worked an hour, and I worked 10. Why am I getting the same thing? Right? And then the vineyard owner comes up and he says to the guy, he says, look, friend, he says, basically, it's my money. I gave you what we agreed to, right? If you look at your contract, it says that you're going to work for me all day, and I'm going to pay you a denarius. And I did that, didn't I? He said, look, hey, man, I gave you your breaks when I said I was going to give you your breaks. You got your lunch. I let you call your wife, right? And I gave you everything I said I was going to give you. Why are you so upset? I gave you what was fair. I gave you what we agreed to. I didn't wrong you. I didn't go back on our contract. I didn't pay you half of what we agreed to. He says, look, hey, man, if I want to be generous with my money, you don't get to tell me that I can't do that. You know, if I want to just walk up to somebody on the street and give them $100, you can't tell me, not to do that. It's not your money. It's mine. And he says, look, if I want to be generous, you don't get to tell me not to. He rebukes the workers that have been working for him. So let's back up a little bit, though. Because if we're being honest, I don't think any of us could say that we do anything different. Or at least that we'd be really tempted to do the exact same thing. I mean, let's just think about this, right? You go to work. Let's make this real world. Think about your job, okay? Think about if you go to work. Think about the worst part of your job, all right? Now, I know many of your jobs. I know a lot about many of your jobs. I know that all of you have some pretty awful parts of your job that you just hate to do, right? It is the worst thing. Teachers, parents calling up to complain and yell at you for things that you've done with their kids. Is a good example. Jason, when people leave 1,000 pounds of weight on the floor that you're supposed to tear out, and you have to move it when that's not your job, all right? What is that thing in it is the worst. You hate it. It's miserable. It's hard. It's a lot of work. It stresses you out. Think about that, okay? Now think about the easiest part of your job. What is the part that you're like, oh, today is my day to do this, right? Today is a in-service day, and there's no children in the school building, so it's quiet, right? This is, I don't know, whatever it is for you. What is that one thing that you're like, oh, man, this is my easy day. This is my day that I can relax. Like, this is the work that I enjoy doing. If I could get paid to do this all day, every day, my job would be so much better. All right, so everybody got those two things in your head? And if you don't have a job, I don't want to leave our kids out of this. Think about school, think about whatever. Think about at your house. What is the chore that your mom and dad make you do that is the worst? Taking out the trash, cleaning the toilets. I know at my family we always had like a rotation for chores, and there's the easy ones and there's the hard ones. And if you got the hard one twice in a row, there was going to be issues. All right, so everybody got those two things, the hard one and the easy one. Now picture you do the hard one for 10 hours one day, right? Somebody else comes in, does the easy job for 1 hour, right at the end of the day, shows up late, takes the thing that you wanted to do, you were looking forward to, it was easy, and then before you go home, you both get paid the same amount. You get the same amount of recognition, you get the same amount of thanks, same amount of money. Everything's identical. That would be rather frustrating, don't you think? We'd get mad about that. It's probably happened to you before. You say, look, me and this guy, we get paid the exact same salary, and he comes in an hour late and sits on his phone and barely gets anything done. I do double the work. I get the same amount of pay. We've all had that experience. So we can relate to these guys, right? But let's think about what really caused the issue. Because we agree in theory with the vineyard owner. We agree like, okay, yeah, it's his money. He can do whatever he wants with it. We understand that. Like it makes logical sense to us until we think about it in terms of real world stuff. And we say, well, wait a minute. I know it makes sense, but I still don't like it. I know it makes sense, but I'm still going to argue with it when it shows up in my life. So what is it that actually happens here? What is it that causes the issue? We're tempted to say that the issue was that the vineyard owner paid more to the workers who only worked an hour. But if you read through the story, if you look at the narrative, that's not where the hang-up is. Here's the issue. The problem is the workers that took the most of the labor, the workers that worked the most, that were there all day, the issue came from them looking at what was handed out to those that worked an hour. I mean, if you think about it, if you're the vineyard owner, he would have had way less issues if he had just paid the 10-hour workers first. He said, look, if you got here first, come up. Here's your denarius, right? They would have gotten their denarius, and they would have gone home happy. They said, hey, I showed up to work. He said he'd pay me a denarius. I worked all day. I got my denarius. He wasn't a jerk. He didn't yell at me. He didn't criticize me. That was a good day of work. These guys would have gone home happy. And then the guys who worked 8 hours, when they got their denarius, would have said, I got the same amount as this guy. That's great. He says, look, I got paid for 2 hours of work that I didn't do. They would have gone home happy. And then the 6-hour guys would have said, hey, man, we worked 6 out of 10 hours and we still got paid for 10. This is incredible. And on down the line, you see every single person would have just been happier and more content because every person would have gotten more than the person before them. Which is how it works for us too, right? If we're getting more than the person ahead of us, we're happy. Until we find that we're getting less than the person behind us. And so if this vineyard owner had reversed it, everything would have been good. Nobody would have been upset. Everybody would have been happy. Everybody would, even those 8 out of 10 hour guys would have been ecstatic. Hey, that's 20 free bucks. I don't care who you are, 20 free bucks is great, right? If we're getting more than the person ahead of us, we're content. If we're getting less than the person behind us, is where we have the issue. You see, this is rampant across our society, right? Our society, and this isn't just like an America thing, this is just humanity, right? We thrive on comparison. You ever notice that? That in our lives, so often, what matters is not reality. What matters is how we compare to something else. Right? A silly example that I thought of this week is look at drink sizes at fast food restaurants, right? There is no logical reason why we need anything more than small, medium, and large, right? How many people can think of at least 10 different drinks that you can buy at various stores that have different names for large, right? Extra large, double XL, double gulp, big gulp, right? You go to 7-Eleven, you can get a 10-liter cup of soda. It's ridiculous. Everything is about being bigger than everything else. So it doesn't matter. It's not about volume. It's just, so that's that size. Can I have a bigger one? And that's, again, that's a goofy example. That's a silly example. But think about it. That's what everything is for us. Everything is about comparison. Am I getting more than this person? Am I going faster than this person? Now, I'm not talking about challenging ourselves. I'm not talking about trying to make ourselves better. I'm talking about how we relate to other people, right? This is the whole, like, if you have a $10,000 car, you want a $15,000 car. If you have a $15,000 car, you want a $20,000, and on down the line, because we completely surround ourselves. We define ourselves not by who we are, but by how we compare to other people, which is what happens here. Because again, if you had taken all of these workers and called them privately into separate rooms and paid them individually and made sure they didn't see each other's salaries, everyone would have gone from happy and content to unbelievably ecstatic, right? The worst of them would have said, hey, it was a good day. I'm going home. I made my fair wage. That guy would have said, man, picture this. These guys get home to their wives. Guy one, hired beginning of the day, comes home, any other day, any other scenario, and says, look, it was a great day. Man, I got to the marketplace early. I made sure I got picked, and I worked all day, so I earned a full day's wage. My day was great. It was hard work. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I want to go to bed, but hey, I was picked to work, and I was given the opportunity to make money, so guess what? Our kids get to eat tomorrow. Man, if I'm a dad, that's a good day. I got to wake up and provide for my family today. That's awesome. That was a great day. How do you think his conversation with his wife actually went that night? How was your day? Oh, it was terrible. Well, did you not get a job? No, I got a job. Well, did they short you on your pay? No, and he paid me exactly what he's going to tell me. But would you believe what he did? He paid this other guy 10 times what I got. Well, he paid him 10 denarius? No. He paid him 1, but he only worked 1 hour. Unbelievable. Should have given me more. See, in both those scenarios, he made the exact same amount of money. Everything about his situation was identical. The only thing that changed was the other guy's situation. And it's amazing how the other guy's situation can make our situation worse. How nothing can change in my life, but all of a sudden, if you get a blessing, my life got significantly worse. Nothing actually changed in my life. It's just in your life. But for some reason, that makes our life seem worse. Think about it this way. You're walking down the street one day. Some guy walks up to you and says, hey, can I give you $100 cash? How many people think that would be a good day? All right? We have people who agree and people that are too lazy to raise their hands. All right? Somebody walks up to you on the street and says, here's $100 cash. And they're not shady, okay? This isn't like, oh, is that a bank robbery? No, don't worry about it. You want the cash or not? All right? We're not, just some nice guy walks up and says, hey, you want $100? Absolutely. You get home that day, like, hey, my day was awesome. Somebody gave me $100 for no reason. What happens when he gives you your $100, you start walking, and then you hear a voice behind you. It says, hey, do you want $200? And you turn around, and he's talking to somebody else. What would you do? Say, well, how come I didn't get $200? You'd be like, that guy doesn't deserve $200, but you do. We do this all the time. It's perfectly fine for people to be generous to us, but when people begin to be generous to people in our lives that we don't think deserve it, which, let's be honest, usually means that they just don't deserve it as much as we do, we begin to get upset. Everything in our lives is about comparison. $100 for me is great, but if it's $200 for you, then all of a sudden I had a rough day. We get so caught up in the hierarchy, in the comparing me to you, and where do you fall and where do I fall, and oh man, I just got a new job and I got paid, I'm getting paid $20 an hour. It's awesome. I got a pay raise. I'm so excited. Oh yeah, my buddy works there. They pay him $25. I knew that guy was a scumbag. Nothing changed about your situation. And I don't want to make this all about money. Money's an easy example. So broaden this in your mind. I mean, the way people treat you, the way people give things to you, the blessings people receive in their life, the relationships people have, the friendships people have, the things people are able to do, the way people are able to live. We spend so much time looking over the fence at our neighbors to make sure we measure up. Louis C.K., who is not a person I ever thought I would quote in church. He's a comedian, and he does this sketch with his daughter, and he says his daughter and her sister are fighting. One got a lollipop, and she didn't. He says, look, the only time you should look in your neighbor's bowl is to make sure he has enough to eat. But we spend so much time looking at our neighbor's bowl to make sure we were served a fair amount. We spend so much time looking at those around us, making sure that we didn't get shortchanged, make sure that we're not missing out, and making sure that we measure up. So here's what we need to do, church. This comes down to two things. This comes down to 1, faith, and 2, identity. Number 1, faith. Do you trust that God will take care of you? That's the first issue here, is that if we're going to be Christians, if we're going to say, look, Jesus, I want you to save me from my sins, but I recognize that Christianity isn't just this contract where I say, pay my sacrifice, I'm good, I'm good to go, I can move on with my life, and I'm covered. This is, God, take control of my life. I want to not only be free from the guilt of sin. I not only want to just go to heaven, but I want you to change the way I live. I want your grace and your peace and your hope in my life. I want it to just permeate who I am. I want you to change how I look at things and how I feel about things and the way I do things. Jesus changed all of that. If we give him that authority, we're saying, Jesus, I trust you to take care of me. I trust that as you love me, you will care for me and you will provide for me. And the first part of this is we need to believe that. And we say we do. We like to say the words we'll put on paper, but in your heart, do you really believe that? Do you truly 100% in your heart, in a way that it affects your moods and your understanding and the way you live, do you believe that God wants to and will provide everything that you need to survive and to live in his grace and in his love? Now, we're not up here guaranteeing Ferraris or anything like that, but this is, Jesus, will you make sure that I have food on the table? Will you provide for my needs and do so in a way that teaches me to be more like you? And Lord, maybe teaching me to be more like you means blessing me financially so that I can be a giving person. And maybe you want to put a lot of resources in my stewardship so I can give those to other people. And maybe it's, man, Jesus, you're calling me to not have a lot of money. You're calling me to need to rely on other people for what I have. And that's hard. Jesus, I want to be the guy who's called to be rich. But you've called me to be the guy who's poor, and so you're doing that in a way that it teaches me how to rely on you through other people and to trust in you when I don't know where the money's coming from. And saying, Lord, I trust that everything you do in my life will be for my benefit, and that you will be fair, you will be honest, and you will do what's best for me. And then part 2 is identity. Do you allow Jesus Christ to identify who you are? Or are you constantly worried about, am I as good as this person? Are you saying, man, I want to be defined by the way I play this instrument, so I got to make sure I can play as fast and as good as this other person, because otherwise my identity is going to suffer. You say, I want to be defined by how nice my house is, and so, man, my neighbor just put a new roof on, and so now all of a sudden I'm second best, and second's not first, and so I got to get a new roof. And are you allowing him to identify you? Are you allowing him to create an identity in you? Because he's fair and he's honest. Because he's the vineyard owner who looked at that last guy and said, man, you only got to work an hour today, but your kids still need food. You still need to be able to provide for your family, so I'm going to pay you for the full day because that's my way to bless you. When you see that happen to the people around you, do you say, well, isn't it my turn to get a little extra? Or can you honestly just look at them and say, man, I am happy for you. I am happy that happened for you. I'm so glad that you were given that gift or that opportunity or that blessing. And say, look, I've got enough. God's fair with me. What he did for me or what this other person did for me, it's fair. It's honest. This other person has blessed me with in this case, it was a full day's wage or whatever it is, and say, look, people have helped me. I've been blessed. I'm happy that you were blessed even more. So here's some practical stuff quickly before we end. Just some suggestions for you to consider. Suggestion number 1, find a person in your life that you have trouble doing this with. Find a person in your life that you look at them and you say, you don't deserve the blessings that you're being given. I am upset, I am frustrated that you are getting what you're getting. And at the heart of it, I'm frustrated because I'm not getting it or because I don't think you deserve it. Find that person, pray for that person, and ask God to bring you to a point where you can genuinely rejoice with them in what they've been given.